All right, welcome everybody, and those of you who are in our morning prayers, welcome back. Welcome back. We are here live, broadcasting live out of Helena, Montana, the capital of the empire, St. Constantine's mother, um, the great Republican Empire of Montana. Um, what is up? Good to see everybody. Let's do some announcements. Shall we? Um, Huge success. Sign up for the Canvas University online courses, the asynchronous courses, the 16-week, although you can take them at your own speed if you want, but they are a 3 unit credit um, university 16-week course. Uh, the largest enrollment thus far, which means this is going to be the best semester yet. And so, in light of that, I'd shut it down. I was going to shut it down last Tuesday for the sale, but um, I'm going to keep it open for a few more days. So if you want to join, take advantage of those amazing sales that I'm not going to offer those greatest sales. Um, you can purchase them and take them later. So that's why I was encourage people that they're like, will you offer it again? It's just probably not that great of a deal. But you can purchase them now and then do them a year later, like, and you have access to them forever. Like, so go ahead and check that out on the Patristic Faith website on the shop. Got a question here. My fiance I go through catechism at an Orthodox church in Colombia. Would we be able to get married in an Orthodox church in the United States? Yeah, I don't see why not. Um, that is interesting though. Some that is interesting. I guess it just have to be done without a civil marriage license. Typically, what happens is that they're separated, and some priests don't even do this. Um, they'll do the sacramental marriage, and then some priest obviously then will sign off on and send off the civil so that you're legally married as well. So you'll just have to contact wherever you would want to get married, the priest and of that parish, and see how they do things. Um, or you get the marriage certificate from in Colombia and take it with you too. That's probably the best way to do it. And then that sign is set off to your to whoever that's sent off to, and whatever government uh, agency court. I guess it's the court. Good question. Had a good Q&A AMA with Ben from Cleave to Antiquity. What's your favorite fictional story? Probably, and it's because it did something in my life. Because of my learning disabilities, I had a really difficult time in high school, grade school, junior high, retaining anything. I would just read it and forget exactly what I read when I was done at the end of the page. So I really kind of struggled with reading. I wasn't dyslexic or anything like that. I just had no retention because probably something to do with ADD. I don't know. Anyways, I remember senior year literature English class. I read Don Quixote, Cervantes, and it was the first time that I actually like I could visualize stuff. I retained it. I loved the story, and it gave me hope that I actually could read. It was a turning point in my life. So it always holds a special place in my heart as far as fiction. Don Quixote. Um, well, yeah, Zeph has a good question. Does the word denomination imply or directly come from nominalism? Yes, but probably not in the way that you think. Nome is name. Um, so the reason why the philosophical movement uh, was given the title or phrase nominalism is because they say there's no essence, real essences, there's just names. Denomination is not linked to the philosophical idea of nominalism, it's linked etymologically to name. Names for different Christian groups. That's what. Does that make sense? But denomination doesn't imply the philosophical idea of a denial of real essentialism. But good question. Other questions? Some interesting questions about yesterday came up in Q&A. The reading that I struggle the most with, I have terrible recall. I really do. History. Just like all the names and places, and it's just like in and out. I lose. Uh, and the reason why I do better at uh, mathematics, logic, and philosophy is I don't have to really rely as much on my recall and memory. It's like, just that logically makes sense. I just think it through. I'm like, and I remember the kind of the intellectual or logical pattern, or the mathematical kind of like principles. Like, it's really easy for. I mean, once I learned, I did struggle. I was really bad at mathematics, in grade school, junior high, and high school. But once I put the hard work in, and you know, after I got out of high school and mastered mathematics, like it's not hard, like for me, because I don't have to rely on that disability of lack of recall. It's just like that. I look at it, makes sense. It's just, but history is not like that. History is relies a lot more on dates and names and places that I really struggle with. But I'm trying to think how I do. I do underline stuff, and also, like I said, nonfiction philosophy and stuff like that's a lot easier for me because it's like I know the arguments, like I get generally the principles, and then I want to remember a quote or something like that. I underline it, and then typically what I do is, if I go further in my notes, then I write that out in like a Word document. Like, oh, it's something I want to go retrieve later. Um, what's really interesting now, after undergraduate and reading the great books, which I read all the great books, all of these books too as well, front to back. Um, it's very rare that I actually pick up a book and read front to back. Most of the books I've read, so I just need to go back to them. So typically, I have a thought or a theme that I'm working on, and then I go back and I pull up a chapter or something like that, and I work through, retrieve that, work through it again. But It's also the time, now being, clergy and a professor, and, teaching catechesis class and stuff like that, that it's like, I can't even imagine having time to sit through and read a front to back a book while doing writing and other stuff. So Zeph knows, yeah. So it's not that they reject anything universal. It's just literally name, denom of a name, right? Of the group or something like that. And nominalism just means names as well. So that's the only way. Marissa Jones, 1999. Wow. Tommy and I were not able to be married within the church prior to his passing. Oh, that's. We only had a Protestant marriage from prior to. Just curious, how would it work if I were to remarry in the future? Um, it would. Yeah, you could get. You never had a sacramental marriage in the Orthodox Church, so technically they wouldn't. It wouldn't be, by the church standards, a remarrying. But that doesn't negate your love and relationship and what you had and the sanctity of it. They recognize that, but they don't count it against you as you've already had one marriage. Does that make sense? Which is nice. Good question. This comes up when oftentimes there's a seminarian, uh, who might have had a prior marriage outside of Orthodoxy. The canons state that clergy, they can't be divorced. Um, and you are what you are once you're ordained. So if you're single, you're going to be ordained celibate. You can't marry after. If you're married, then you're married, and you can't remarry. If a spouse, after being ordained clergy, if your spouse were to, God forbid, die or divorce, you couldn't remarry. Um, Depending on how the divorce, who initiated that, how one responded to that, you could actually be laicized. That happens as well. However, although it presents some difficulties, there's it doesn't prevent somebody who had a prior marriage outside of Orthodoxy, from being ordained. Sometimes there might be kind of roadblocks. It's a little bit more difficult, but anyways, know plenty of people that, good priests, great priests, friends, that their wives had divorced them when they were Protestants, and yet when they converted after the divorce to Orthodoxy and were able to go to seminary and be ordained. What do you mean by personified? Like a person? Death is like the guy with the. There's a real place. There's a real thing. And symbolic doesn't mean not real. Symbios means two things brought together. So you just got to be clear. There is a literal place, a metaphysical place, as well as a physical place, in which the soul, prior to, the resurrection, that all souls went to. And that place, Hades, Sheol, was actually metaphysically divided up, between Abraham's bosom and, a state that was somewhat blessed and comforting, like in the bosom, right? Has a notion of comfort, and those in which it was not a good place. But none of them, if you read the Psalms, they can't pray, they can't speak, um, they can't do anything. So it's even in Abraham's bosom, there's a sort of blessedness. It's still not a great place to be. Like, that's why Christ had to go in and tarot Hades, right? And fix that. Oh, when death speaks it, well, to the devil, is the question. First of all, that's a reject. Like, don't be reading the Gospel of Nicodemus. That's a that's an apocryphal book. So death, if it is personified, is usually referred to the devil. It's not another entity, so that doesn't make sense. The death is speaking to, like, the devil is the king of death. That's why in the Paschal Matin service, referring back to the Psalms, Christ enters into the devil's domain, right? And is at the gates of Hades, right? And that's where the priest is enacting and hitting. And there's an interchange between the Lord of Sabaoth, the King of Glory, our Lord and God and Savior Jesus Christ, between death, the devil, and he opens the door because the devil had the keys to he was the one that took in the souls. That's why Hades is not a great place to be prior to the resurrection. Christ enters in. In fact, the devil lets him in because he thinks in his pride that he knows that Christ is God, but he thinks that God, in his pride, he thinks that God messes up by becoming, taking on human nature and flesh and blood, because it's like, I own that. The devil owned that. It's like, that's how I win against God, is I take his creation, which his image is made, and I hold the keys of death. It's mine. So he thought he had God the Lord. It was like, oh, you're so dumb for becoming incarnate, not knowing that, understand because of his pride, that taking on human nature is what allowed him to enter into death. But you can't kill life itself, divinity. And so it's like the Father Russell says, the devil opens the doors, lets the king of the Lord of Hosts, the Lord of Sabaoth in, and it bites down on a jawbreaker. Like, uh-oh. And that's what happens. The doors open. It's and all the lights come on. It's like, uh-oh, it's over. Game over. And now the devil, death, personified as the devil, can't hold mankind anymore. It's death. There is no Sheol anymore. It's a tunnel that all are going to go into and come out on the other side, even the damned. There is no Sheol anymore. Sheol's a pit. There's no pit. It's a tunnel. Oh, yeah, I don't know too much about the Gospel of Nicodemus. I thought it was, I mean, there's different notions of apocryphal. There's like the Gnostic Gospels, um, that are completely rejected, and then there's just apocryphal. Um, I'm looking up stuff that it's not included in canon, but is referenced or has been used by the church. So maybe I stand corrected. I'm looking. It gives some kind of evidence, and you might refer to it sort of like we use the proto-evangelism of James. So it's probably maybe right below kind of the standard of proto-evangelism of James. I don't know. To be honest, I'm not an expert on. I couldn't tell you. Yeah, I've never even read it, so I don't know. All right, let's see what else we got going. Whoa, awesome. H. Brossi, $100, Father. We need channel memberships. What's your favorite icon? If you have one, mine would be the Good Shepherd. That's a great question. I've always liked the icon of the sign. I like a special kind of relationship with that, and my goddaughter Valerie actually done a huge. It's in our parish. Huge icon of the sign from Novgorod, Russia. Is where that originates. And the whole miracle story associated with that. That might be. It's always hard for me to answer what's my favorite something. Good question. Yeah, I'm gonna do channel memberships. I have that actually halfway set up. I just need to finish a few things, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much, H. Brossi. Give a big shout out for your donation there. Father George Aquarius, I think the best on the stuff about death, and he talks about that. No, they don't experience it the same way. Um, because Sheol prior to the resurrection was a pit. Um, there are still similarities insofar as death. That death is a separation of the soul and body. So although you're conscious and you're aware of stuff, um, the fact, for example, the toll houses and the way that we do the commemoration, the different days gives us like some insights. We don't know, like, again, as far as the details, what that looks, how it works. Um, but there's a significance of 3 days, like in the pit, like in the let's just say the grave, and then there's 9 days. Okay, so that means it's really more like they're in the tunnel, the grave tunnel. Um, And again, a lot of this is just a literal like it's literally a metaphysical place, but it's like it's impossible to describe it as a physical place because your soul's not physical. There's an ascension 9 days from our perspective. Time's different on the other side. So it's not going to be the ranking of angels. And going to worship in the Trinity. So that's not like Sheol. So that's why it's a tunnel. So there's an experience in the grave, but the grave has a tunnel. This is the way Father George talks about. And then after worshiping the Trinity, there's 40 days. 40 days describes after Christ's resurrection of being on the earth. And Orthodox tradition is that the soul kind of metaphysically wanders the earth, trying to find its location, metaphysically speaking, as its resting place. So they're still in death, but it's not a pit. It's still outside the tunnel. It's really strange. Like, that's why we don't really don't, beyond just those kinds of words, those metaphorical words, we don't really understand what that's like. I imagine it's in relation to, given the virtues, how close you are to the Trinity after you worship, waiting, resting, but it's still connected somehow to the physical earth. Until the general resurrection. But I would look up, Father George Aquaro is pretty good on that. Also, How Our Departed Ones Live is another book, and then Father Seraphim Rose's book. Like, those are I'm sure okay, good questions. Let's see what else we have. Toll House is significantly different from Purgatory because there's no purging process. The Toll Houses aren't purging. It's just a journey. So Purgatory is not actually defined as a journey. It's it's like it's a created grace. It's a created fire, which is one of the reasons why Saint Mark of Ephesus rejected the union on the grounds of Purgatory. Is there is no created fire. It is a legalistic kind of merit model of, well, in some way, and they've changed their kind of position of how it looks, but it still reduces to statutorily and legally setting stuff straight that you have to actually go through. So I remember Bishop Vetter, the Roman Catholic bishop here in Helena, telling the Roman Catholic students here at the college that, oh, it's like if you broke a window, you're forgiven, but you have to make that right. You have to pay for the window or something like that. And he said that's what purgatory is like. And I'm like, that we definitely don't have something like that. that there's this accounting mathematical kind of, okay, well, you're forgiven, but you now owe or something like that. It's just a statutory kind of meritorious legal. Toll House has none of that. All Toll Houses are is a journey, and demons accuse you, but they can't do anything to you. All they can do is what demons always do, is scare you. But you have an angel to, right, combat them and actually say, no, he's a servant of God. But you're in the aerial realm, the aerial Toll Houses. They're there. They're going to be like, you did this and you did. And your angel is guiding you up to the Holy Trinity and defending you in front of the. But, it's not like tests that you have to pass through, or a purging process, or setting things right, or a fire or anything. So I actually don't know why people think that Toll Houses sound similar to purgatory. I've never figured that out. They never sound similar to purgatory so I don't know if somebody just one day said that and it got into people's minds, but I don't get it. So, but there's why they're essentially different. Yeah, we have one of our parishioners is a police officer here, and he always cracks up when I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a nap. He's like, naps at noon? I'm like, yeah, I'm a napper. I usually don't even fall asleep. I need to lay and rest my mind. Just, unless I'm doing physical labor, but when it comes to reading and thinking out stuff, like philosophically, like, if I'm tired, I'm a retard. I cannot think straight. I'm a mess. And so that's why I'm like, I need to reboot, have a cup of coffee, then back to work. Yeah, there's no testing. It's not like you have to pass this test and go through this Toll House, and if you don't pass, then you're. So whoever came up with the idea, and that's why it's such Toll Houses are so controversial, is because people add in these stuff that's not part of the teachings of the Toll House, like, oh, they're tests, and it's like, there's no tests. They're just accusers trying to scare you, just like they try to scare you now about death. That's why Christ says, fear not. Metaphysical pokings, yeah. There's no pass the test, pay the demon, or don't go the next step. Like, okay, what else do we almost want to kind of address? One of the questions that came in yesterday. I was actually irritated by it. I just wish we could move beyond. Should I bring it up? I feel like it needs to be addressed, but I hate talking about it just because it's so sensitive and people could. Anything you say could be used against you. People thought this guy was a troll. I don't know. But it's such a weird. First of all, I think I brought it up in the Q&A stream. About this weird kind of puritanicalism, this Protestant kind of puritanicalism. Anything you touch, it's like, well, if I'm there, does it? Now, obviously, there's places and situations you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be at a strip club. You shouldn't be at Burning Man. Give me some other places no Orthodox should ever go to or be associated with. Ayahuasca ceremonies down in the jungles in Colombia. Okay. Let's just go through. This is a fun one. All the places that are definitely clear. And that's always kind of a good methodology, anything. Let's go to the extremes. Like things that are really clear that you shouldn't be. Yeah, there's areas as you go in the middle that you're kind of like, that's a bit more obscure. I don't know. But if you have like a kind of a general principle that you derive from kind of the extreme clear cases, then you have a kind of a good guide. LA. Yeah, I already said Burning Man strip clubs, ayahuasca ceremonies. Bohemian Grove. Mecca. Kissing the black cube. Come on, help me out. India. Why is it so fun to roast India for some reason? The Wall. By the way, that's really interesting. Let me tell you a story when I think it was 2015. I went to Palestine, Israel, Jerusalem, and different places throughout Palestine with my spiritual father. I wasn't ordained. Might have been 2014. Because I don't even know if I was. When did I go into seminary? 2013? Maybe it was 2013. I'll have to look up. It was a long time ago. Went with our church, our Romanian church group from St. Mary's, Anaheim, and Father Cornell, my spiritual father, the priest. And we stayed at Mount Olives and the Arab side. And it was a crazy time, too, because there was one of these radical Third Temple rabbis from the United States that came, flew in just that day, and then supposedly he was shot by one of the Palestinians, and they just went full lockdown in East Jerusalem. We had to go through gates, and then they hyped it all up. In fact, they were shooting like tear gas all over East Jerusalem into our hotel. I actually had to close the door because there was tear gas coming in to close the window, and you could hear the like going on, like the can like exploding and stuff like that. And then they were driving by. The IDF were driving by with septic tanks full of like septic poop water spraying down the buildings. I remember talking to the hotel owner, and I was like, first of all, I was like, oh man, what is that smell? He's like, oh, they spray down with a tanker. They just hose down the streets. I said, why? To antagonize us, so we throw a rock, so it justifies them shooting a missile into or killing. So it's all antagonizing. Anyways. My priest says nobody's allowed to go to the wall. In the tourists. Like, he was just like, absolutely not. He forbid. Then what happened is, I think I had a phone call or something like that, and I was going to meet the tour group. My priest took off, and I said, well, Father, I'll meet you at the Holy Sepulchre or something like that. Or one of the cemeteries. I can't remember where. It's been a long time. Anyways, the closest way to get into the city, the old city. So they have these. So we were up here East Jerusalem, Mount Olives. It's the highest point in Jerusalem. And then you go down in the city so that you're facing the Golden Gates. Then on let's see, that would be the south side is that the Dung Gate? Which is funny, which is exactly where the Wailing Wall is. There's like each side's named a different gate. And it's pretty big, so I'm just like, all right, I'm not going to walk miles around. So I actually went by the Wailing Wall. I wouldn't have gone because and then what was so hilarious too is I just got a really bad haircut, and my priest was making fun of me, just kind of fun humor, because he saw red in my beard. He's like, "Are you sure you're not Jewish?" And then I was like, "Yeah, maybe I could pass." I kid you not, I found a yarmulke because they have a hilarious story. They have, but the Wailing Wall is the only wall that they actually have metal detectors, and you've got to go just like an airport thing. And I kid you not, and they're weird, right? They're weird about, like, they'll persecute Christians unless you're evangelical, and they're gonna give me problems going through here. So what I did is I put the yarmulke on, and they were like, "Shalom," like, "Shabbat Shalom," and they like just rushed me right through, and then they took it off. It was really funny. I did not touch the wall, but I did see it. Anyways, there's a funny story. Places that I should have not went to. Maybe I should have walked miles the other way. Anyways, a funny story. Okay, places you should not go. That's why we're talking about the Abrahamic Faith Center. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I went to the Holy Sepulchre. Yep. I think we got enough places listed that no Orthodox Christian should go to. Disneyland. I think you should go to Disneyland. I don't think you should get all weirded out by it, but like, yeah, go ahead and check out Disneyland. So this guy yesterday comes in and in the chat yesterday and asked a question. He works for somebody who has racist rhetoric, and should an Orthodox Christian work? Now, already, if you're using that word, like, that's already red flags. Because it's lost all meaning. Like, what do you mean? Anti-whiteism? That's probably not what they. I should have asked that. Is your or he's telling racial like jokes of other ethnicity? Like, I mean, what a spell word. So I already don't believe that you're a serious person if you're using racism. Should we? Now, if you said anti-whiteism, I would take you more serious. I think that's an actual general problem. But Ben just started kind of making fun of him. Like, why don't you go cry to your mom? Like, but what a weird. Who cares if your boss is a racist? Whatever that word means. He told racial jokes and he doesn't like certain ethnicities. So you think that's you should leave your job? I'm too pure. I can't be around this kind of language. I tell my parishioners and friends, don't ever use certain words from the anti-Christian groups. You know who popularized the word racism, right? A person that wants to see Christianity destroyed, that hates Christ. Why are you using that word? I mean, stuff that's not even as serious. I would even be telling, uh, yeah, exactly, Trotsky. You're just revealing what side, like, oh, you're with the Antichrist. Like, which side are you on? Are you with the Christians or are you with the anti-Christians? Like, what is the matter with you? But I would say stuff that's not even as dangerous, words that you shouldn't use, rights, human rights language. It comes out of the Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment, uh, the EU Declaration of Human Rights. I mean, it's all like, don't even use those words, and that's far less dangerous than the R word. Don't use the phobia words. Don't use bigot unless you're mocking at, like, I saw somebody in here, hello bigot, like being sarcastic. That's fine. I don't care about that. NAZI, don't use that. Like, they're weaponized where they're anti-Christian words that you should not be, that dehumanize people. As I mentioned, I'm like, those are the sort of words I'd say both on the left and right that are being used, that created this culture of violence that killed Charlie Kirk. Like, and I blame the conservatives and right using those words too. I'm like, don't even use it. They don't have any meaning. They're empty, vacant. Why? Because especially in wokeism and just the idea of postmodernity, words are not intended to convey information and facts. Everything's interpreted through kind of Marxian and neo-Marxian critical theory, oppress and oppressor group, that they're appropriated words kept vague and ambiguous so that you can persecute Christians, white Europeans. When we get down to it, and this is not a pro NAZI, like, yeah, those guys are tards too. Just listen to Jay and what we're having to deal with the Groypers, and so don't get stuck in the dialectics. But the Talmudic Bolsheviks had a purpose in the rise of communism to destroy European culture. Why? Because it's Christian, that's why. So the anti-whiteism, anti-Europeanism, and descendants of is really the motivating part of that is anti-Christian. It's anti-Christian. That's why I'm like, I hate it when people bring up and just like anything, people can't have any nuance, so they go to the other side, and now I'm a pro NAZ, like, because they actually see a legitimate problem with the Talmudic Bolshevik international socialist movement, internationalism, and world banking, and all the. So it's like, you're gonna become a Nazi, like. well, that's not the way. But Aristotle always says, Aristotle once said that when the stick's bent too far, one, is bent, people never find the kind of royal path, right? They bend it and go the other way. So just qualifying, you can't be like, well, he's a pro. It's like, no, it's always orthodoxy's the royal path. That doesn't necessarily mean the middle, but you get what I'm saying. So to be honest, it was a bit annoying to see that question. Because it's like you're with the enemy. Like you joined, that's an enemy word. It's an anti-Christian word. But like who can like I mean how crazy suppose it was legitimate. Suppose this guy, this boss actually had racist rhetoric. Suppose he wanted to eliminate he not there's nobody even out there I think wants to eliminate races and ethnicities except for one group. Let me put a flag on that. Suppose he hated other ethnicities and cultures. I don't know what this guy's. I think it's pretty presumptuous to say, because he's using rhetoric to say, "Who cares? Like, do your job. Don't talk about it. Maybe don't talk about politics at work. How about that?" But if that was a legitimate to be like, no Christian should, like, okay, well then you couldn't work for a woke boss. Couldn't work for, what if my boss is a Democrat? Can't work for, like, do you see how absurd this is? What if your boss goes to strip clubs? Can't work, like, it's just. And then he had this kind of dig. Oh, so separating church from social activities is bad, but separating faith from work, that's bad too. I'm like, what is the matter? Like, see what I mean? Doesn't this sound like troll kind of? If you're in there, are you a troll? Like, if you, why don't you come back on and explain to me what the heck you're thinking? Like, no, I think you should. If I was your priest, I'd be like, you should shut your mouth. And not try to. Oh, he's like, we don't need to hold people accountable. Who told you you need to hold people accountable? Who are you? Who made you bishop or king that like you have to fix all the world's ills and hold people? That's real kind of woke. We need to hold people accountable for their speech. Now, if you own a business, like fine, I think you could fire anybody or get rid of whoever you want for saying violating code of conduct on speech. Yeah, what if your boss is gay and cringe? Do you see it's just this weird puritanical, I can't be around anything and work that's bad that would touch me. And I'm going to hold that person accountable. Talk about pharisaical hypocrisy. Let's open up your moral soul and go through, because you're casting the stone. You say, oh, you got a whole, you personally, who are you? We're going to make sure this is. It's upsetting. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was actually. But do you see what I'm talking about? Anyways, that came up. That was interesting. We obviously got the TOGOC questions, which I'm just tired of dealing with these autistic keyboard warriors. The question was, my boss is a racist with racist rhetoric, and he didn't feel that a Christian should work for it. It makes him complicit for. I'm like, I'm like, I guarantee. How much you want to? I'd probably put money on it. How much you want to bet he's not actually a racist? Well, he said a racist joke and said mean things about another ethnicity. That's why Ben was like, grow a pair. Like, go cry to your mom. Like, you sound like a child. You should see. You should see what Jay Dyer just texted me. And yeah, like the other side's just as bad, right? Look at this is a great. I'm gonna read this. It's not a private. I'm sure he'd be fine with this. Jay says, text just sent, which is really interesting that we're talking about this. Have you seen all the wignats and gripers going nuts after the various clips? In my Infowars talk, I got massive views. They're as insane as the left. Amen. How weird that text just came in. Let me see. We are talking about it right now on the stream. Interestingly enough. So the other extreme's not any better, okay? That's what. But my point is, like, suppose you were called as a Christian and be like, I can't work for somebody who uses racist rhetoric. Notice how crazy this is. Notice how inverted the hierarchy of morality is for these people to ask questions like that. So the worst thing in the world isn't an abortion holocaust, mutilating children, brainwashing them to turn them in, boys into girls and girls into boys. It's not pedo stuff. It's not making a poo-poo caca on the street smoking a crack pipe. It's not the Malthusian death cult of antinatalism, pro-death abortion Skittles. It's being like those aren't the worst things. It's being racially offensive. I mean, how retarded is that? I just don't understand. I don't get it. Totally crazy. Who cares? Like, grow up. Like, people say stupid offensive stuff all the time. I can't work. I can't be around this person. All right, if you want to play that, then you can't work for a woke boss. You can't work for a boss who's a Democrat. You can't work for a boss that's LGBT. You can't. How about bad profanities? My boss says suppose you'd be out of a construction job. Like, you wouldn't be working. Yeah, the R word. Retard. That one you're allowed to in my domain you're allowed. That's you can't use the RACIST word, but you can use retard. I will allow that. There's a whole bunch of words. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. There's even like I said, a liberal professor that won't let his students use because they don't mean anything. They won't let them use the ism words because they're weaponized words and there's no thought behind them. He's a liberal professor. I'm like, right on, man. Right on. I mean, it's just like, so either that guy was a troll or you're a retard. And I'm sorry if that's offensive, but I, I'm, aren't we tired of living in a world where like you can't offend somebody, you can't say it. It's more this puritanicalism. That's why Rebecca Dillahunty had recommended, I'm blanking on the name of the book now, of this the moralism of the left comes from Protestant the Puritans, actually, the the New Englanders up. There's actually a historical and logical link between the pearl clutchers, the virtue sin. You can't say that word. That's not. No Christian. Would Jesus ever say the, retard? Those are left. Those is a liberal mindset that comes out of the Puritans, which is hilarious because then they gaslight you. A liberal always criticize conservative, like this puritanicalism. Yeah, he super chatted. My boss is a racist. Good. I mean, what if I just show him like, I don't know, it sounds like you're a good boss. You can't say that stuff. Because they want to trap you. I got him. He said it. Because it's a weaponized word. I mean, that's why I said they don't kill you because you're a racist. They call you a racist so they can kill you. That's the kind of energy that felt behind that. And I'm like, you want to get us to say something so you can slap that label on and ruin our lives. That's what it's a weaponized word, and it's an antichrist word. Stop using it. Anyways, that was interesting. Now you have the opposite reaction. It's a total cult. The Groypers, I'm telling you, are like, if you haven't figured out, the Wignats. That's the other side. You criticize their leader, and I thought Jay. By the way, who was it last night? Really good. He works with Conrad. Um, he was on the X Space. I find it hilarious, Jay. Jay, why don't you come on? Why don't and talk about this? Criticize their leader, Tiny Mustache Man, and they lose their minds. Criticize Fuentes, they lose their. And that's what they're doing. And I thought there was a really good nuanced take that our friend that works on World War with Conrad, really good. Like what the National Socialists and Tiny Mustache like. They aren't friends of the Christians. They work with the Bolsheviks and the other like no they aren't. Anyways, he's gonna get and they just all mean the same thing. They're like there is appropriateness to language. Like, look, sometimes people would ask me, "Is it?" should a Christian, ever cuss? I heard a Christian say a bad, more of this Puritan, like, no, sometimes, like, yeah, you should probably work on cleaning up your language and do better. But I've heard some very holy people say a bad word that I was like, that's totally appropriate. Words in themselves are not intrinsically evil, but it's what we put into them. And so there is an appropriateness with cuss words, the way that the people can use cuss words, and the Groypers are like that. And they just like, you're Jewish, F you. Like, they're just, it's the same line over and over again. They are NPCs. They are literally the mirror side of the left. Wokesters. No thinking. They parrot. They're totally manufactured. They're children. They're literally children. And they're just as violent and aggressive, maybe not like physically, but in their language and their attitude is the left. That's it. And it's a hive mind. It's a total hive mind. What's a Supra? A Toyota. That's a good. All right, let's see if we got any more super chats, and then we'll move on to some more questions. Those are some hot issues to talk about. It's hard to talk about that because if you do, the people try to ruin your lives. Isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? All right, what else do you guys want? Other good, there was good catechumen, theological questions that people brought in. Oh, he's on the road. Okay. No problem. On the road again. Yeah, that's what they're really getting crazy about is the Jewish ties and infiltration of the Vatican, calling that out. And I'm like, oh, so those are your enemies. And yet you're still, talk about cognitive dissonance, you're supporting the Roman Catholic Church. Okay. That's why they're losing their mind. Yes, comedian Dimitri. It's mentions it's Dimitri K. Yeah, follow excellent historical knowledge and analysis. I was really happy with. So if I'm gonna give a shout out to him, follow him on X. Oh, here's a good question. What's more important, knowing epistemology and metaphysics well or praying well? Praying well, of course. Epistemology and metaphysics is going to save you. Praying will. So, always first things first. Just like this. Politics isn't going to save you. Does that mean nobody should be concerned about politics? No, but it's like fourth, fifth down the list of priorities. Everybody's just got the priorities. Your life to God and family should be first. Always. Come on my space later, as long as it doesn't interrupt. I'm talking to Jay now. My prayer life. I've got. So here, let's give an example of. I'd love to, Jay. I have Vespers at 6 p.m. MST. So as long as it is before that. How about that? See? Perfect example. We have to practice what I preach. And it's a joy. It's not a burden to. Would love. I love services, prayer, and liturgy more than I do X spaces, epistemology, and metaphysics. Those are down the list. Good question. Yeah, actually, let me talk about that. That's really interesting. Oh, cool. In an hour. Yeah, sounds good. What do you think? Sounds good. So I might end the stream early so we can go eat. And shower up. And I was talking about this in the continuing education catechesis class Thursday night. In your rational soul, there's different powers. Obviously, the intellectual powers. And the deepest part of your rational soul is your nous. I like to say power because parts starts to seem like it's composed of parts or substances. That's why I don't like tripartite. You have a rational immaterial soul that unites and animates your body that's naturally connected to it. So it's a type of dualism, a hylomorphic dualism. But the rational soul has powers. It has a power over the body to animate. It has an intellectual power, and it has a noetic power, the deepest part of. And I put this, actually thought it was a great enough line that I came up with that I wrote in my paper. The intellect makes a better slave than a master. If your body, your physical organs are blind, intellectually blind and stupid, just as they are, so can the intellect be without the eyes, right? The light of the eyes, is what scripture says, the nous. So if you let your intellect be the master, not guided by your noetic faculties that you're working on by the acquisition of the Holy Spirit and the virtues, you will be blinded, just as if you let your bodily passions lead your mind. So that's why we put first things first. Acquire the Holy Spirit, acquire the spiritual virtues, clean up your nous, that may shine the light upon your intellect so it's not blind, it can see where it's going. How about that? You like it? The intellect makes a better slave than a master. Unfortunately, in the West, the intellect is the master. They rule over. And so the nous is atrophied and darkened, never enlightens the mind. Probably. Isn't that in the Father? I hope so. I hope what I'm saying was absorbed through the church and the fathers, and I'm just speaking good Orthodox. Oh, that's a really good Thomas Metaphysic. Well, speaking of Thomas Aquinas, I went to Thomas Aquinas College, so um, that's kind of my rubric for like how long I spent in the Trivium Quadrivium. I spent 4 years in um, but what's difficult is that it took 4 years of me being outside of city life and all the distractions. We had no TVs. The only internet usage, we couldn't have internet in our rooms. You had to go to the library, and that's just kind of check your emails, do research and stuff like that. So we're eating, drinking, sleeping, walking, smelling the great books 24/7. Like it was just within the trivium and quadrivium. So if that took for you, I don't know what in a distracted city life with a job and stuff, like how long that would take. That's a great I would try to take something like Thomas Aquinas's curriculum or St. John's and at least get most of those. Let's actually go over that. I'm gonna pull up because I love talking about Thomas, the education here. I mean, this education did more for me. I mean, it just laid the foundations. And because I was a retard in school, in uh, grade school, junior high, and high school, I did have to go to community college for a year and a half and reconstitute and learn mathematics and get better so that I could actually go here and do this. So I had a year and a half uh having to re-educate myself before I could even get my fundamental education here. So you have here in the curriculum of a classical liberal arts, language, logic, math, music, philosophy, theology, natural science, and history and social science. Three of these arts, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, the trivium, concern themselves with the ways in which we naturally order our thoughts and express that order in speech. Yes. Hence, these arts are concerned with words and the various forms of verbal expression, such as sentences and the grammatical parts and the various forms of logical arguments and so forth. Actually, that's really interesting. Now that I'm thinking about when I asked my students a week or two ago, have you ever, we just took some basic kind of sentences and verbs. Have you ever thought about this word? None of them had actually thought about it. Maybe that's exactly why. There's no trivium. How do you, to order your words, thoughts, and speech, express them, requires thinking about them. Okay, so obviously there was some lack of education growing up, not to mention like the kind of time and society that we live in. The four remaining liberal arts, quadrivium, is arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, are all mathematical and concern themselves not with the tools of thought itself, but with things which come first in the order of contemplative learning. Mathematics, etymologically, learnable things, has long been understood essentially to the part of philosophical education. Yeah, that's what I was taught here. You learn mathematics because it's kind of a prerequisite to doing actual philosophy. So you had 2 years of language, logic 1 year, 4 years of mathematics, a year of music and music theory and composing sonatas and writing, which was awesome. 3 years of philosophy, 4 years of theology, 4 years of natural science, and 4 years of seminar. What I would do is I would, oh man, now they have, I didn't have that when I was there. A telescope like that? That's not fair. They have a California campus where I went to. Now they have a New England campus. So here's what I would recommend. You're going to have to figure this out with your schedule. What I'd first do is I'd go through. So notice of those, theology, philosophy, natural sciences, it lists the books that we read. I would pick out a good proportion of those books and I'd set a schedule. Like I said, this is so much reading. It's almost impossible in 4 years out in the middle of the woods in the mountains with no TV or internet. So it's going to take you a lot longer, but at least I think that you could figure out a schedule. Just set the amount of time and then pick these books and these things. Literally write it out, I would say, in a Word document or what's the other? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot the name of Excel document. And just that's how you'd go through the trivium and quadrivium. Pick these great books. If you can do them all, get a good portion, set a schedule, time frame. I'm gonna do this in this amount of time. That would be my recommendation. But great question. Great question. I think everybody who could and should, because it really does form your mind well to think about stuff really well, and which can aid. Again, put prayer life first, but it can really aid in the improvement of your life, the fulfillment, or as say eudaimonia. So I think Thomas Aquinas College does a great job at. I can't, I owe them and their education that they provided for me. Like, I wouldn't be the philosopher that I am without that. So it's a really good education. All right, other questions. Oh, you know what? I can feel. You ever get one of those dreams? I bit down on my tongue last night so hard it woke me up, and I'm like, oh, no, it's gonna hurt tomorrow. I totally forgot about it until just now. I'm like, why am my tongue sore? Thomas Metaphysic asked a question about being a philosophy undergrad and learning more philosophy. Yeah, I could answer that. I definitely have, if you're going to study philosophy, a prescription for start historically, just like we did at Thomas Aquinas College. You start with the pre-Socratics, go through the Greeks, and go. Otherwise, you're going to run into, like, you're going to have problems. At the same time, I'm not a big proponent of just studying philosophy alone, because as you'd said too, studying along with the trivium and the quadrivium, we had talked about one of the reasons why people don't get tagged is because they're right brain deficient. And the left brain is the master rather than the right brain that's supposed to be. And so everything's kind of quantitative, piecemeal, fragmented, a very accurate picture of modern man. And it's because everything, all the disciplines and things that you study are all compartmentalized. There is no classical liberal arts education anymore, other than a couple schools that we just mentioned. So everybody's just a machine that does something. There's no real understanding. So what improves philosophy is reading literature and reading, the great books and poetry. So I think that should accompany it. You start to make connections with things that might not actually look on the face value prima facie connected, and that actually improves your philosophical thinking. So I hope that answers, but it takes a lot of time, and there's no easy way to do philosophy well. I recommend only my papers on tag. I don't think any, like, I really, other than Russ Mannion, could ever recommend somebody else's paper on tag. Like, they're probably Protestants and Calvinists and Reformed, and they're retarded, and they might be kind of pointing and talking in the right direction, but like it's fundamentally flawed, and it's gonna bring a bunch of garbage in that's not good for you. So there's not really anybody out there who's kind of doing that as far as writing papers. Yeah, so you can find them all on my academia.edu, with the exception of my most recent paper, Epistemic Theories and Metatheoretical Validation, which is probably too difficult for you to understand. It's one of the more difficult papers. Uh, it's one of my better papers, but that's what all the philosophers at the last conference said. This is the best paper you've ever read, written. Uh, but I wouldn't start there. That's the only one that I haven't published on academia.edu. You'd have to go to Patristic Faith to find that one. Jabe's papers, yeah, I'd recommend my student Jabe. Scientific method, well, one reason, it's induction. Induction doesn't give you knowledge. You have the problem of induction. Uh, you have so many problems that it doesn't overcome. The problem of answering, it assumes a whole bunch of things that themselves are problematic. Uh, Observational statements, like the difficulties with observational statements, facts. Student donates $10. Thank you so much. Theory laden. You have the problem also of experiment itself. And we go through in our class with, for example, the cathode ray experiment, how that erred. So even if you could get over the problem of induction, which doesn't provide any, because of that there is no knowledge with it, it's viciously circular as well, you still have the problem of experiment. Think about how many conclusions through the scientific method we've made that we thought was good, only to figure out that we missed something. Oh, it wasn't a perfect vacuum in the cathode ray, and so molecules and electrodes from the air got in and actually caused you to. I mean, so for any experiment that you do, you'd have to be omniscient and be like, I know that I've got all the background information and have an omniscient knowledge to isolate. Nobody could do that. So there's a problem of experiment. There's the problem also of the that the scientific method can't overcome the challenge of the underdetermination of data, and that you could, from all that, first of all, the scientific method it doesn't prove a theory, capital T, it assumes one. Scientific method can actually ever tell you which grand theory is actually true. It has to assume it. And then that theory determines, right? They could be incommensurate with other theories. So that's a problem too. And then they color the way that you basically look at the evidence. And so that's why the scientific method doesn't get anywhere near knowledge, which is why a lot of philosophers of science abandon having any kind of realist position on it and just be like, well, I'm a pragmatist when it comes to, I'm an instrumentalist, as you know, it has a use or something like that. But if you sign up for this course, we'll go through all of this and you'll learn exactly what a poor shaped science is in as far as being connected to anything remotely close to knowledge. Oh, there's somebody really cool called. All right, good question. By the way, those courses, especially now, are more affordable than anything you could ever get. Talk to some of the students too. You can contact your local college. Um, if the dean and or chair sign off, we've had several students actually transfer those as transfer accredited units. So uh, I brought down the prices because people are poor. That's why I'm like, you won't get a better deal. When you're looking for, especially at grad school, you need to specifically, depends on what you want to do. Ratings are important if you want to especially transfer to or go to a PhD program. So you unfortunately have to look at that. And I know it's kind of stupid. But as far as your own education, you need to find a professor that and their work that you want to study under. That's it's funny. My cats. Uh-oh. That's Schrodinger's cat outside. We don't know if he's there or not. He's both there and not there. Um, four, four times the speed. All right. What other questions before we end? I'm gonna eat, shower up, and try to jump on this X space with J. Cephas Dyer. Let me see on X. J. Cephas Dyer. Josephus? J. Cephas. J. Cephas. The J Dyad. J Dyad. So I can put that in J. I don't even see where he posted this, David. David, where did you find that he's going on? Oh, in the Discord. All right, let me put this real quick as a reminder. And I'll copy this. I better hurry. 30 minutes? You guys wouldn't count against me if I was a little bit late, would you? Dietism. Dietism. Well, I lean kind of more because of the problems of. I have a general. So the problem with certain philosophy of science that go into becoming metaphysical quietists is they're that way physically too, or anti-realist. I'm not metaphysically I know that I must be some combination between critical realism and instrumentalism. But metaphysically, I'm obviously a metaphysical realist and essentialist. So, but I don't know from science itself. I can't get it to establish, sorts of kind of realisms. I think metaphysically that's so it kind of touches on that. I think that in some sense it might be describing the kind of underlying structures of forms and stuff like that. But then I've got these problems, and so I kind of just well, I don't really need from a scientific point of view to answer. I can be a metaphysical quietist in the science camp and be like, I don't know, it's probably generally touching on or describing some kind of structures, but we err on that, and sometimes we're not hitting those things. And so I use science more as an instrumentalist and I don't have to kind of answer those questions. That's kind of I kind of have a strange amalgamation of different views on. Yeah, you can say more spicy. Like he probably won't stream it onto X, and then I actually streamed his once on X, and on from X to YouTube, and I deleted it immediately because people were rightly pointing out you're gonna get dinged or demonetized. And I'm like, you are, and I am. We all are. Better delete it. No, there's no universalism in the undercurrent in scriptures of the fathers. You do have Saint Gregory has some of that, but it's not exactly the way. It's definitely not Origins, or David Bentley Hart's and kind of modernist idea of universalism, even with Saint Gregory. But no, it's actually, and the other thing, it's universal is condemned by the fifth and sixth ecumenical councils. So, it's a heresy. You can't believe it. Even if you did find a father that said fathers can be wrong, saints can be wrong. It's gonna be in 25 minutes. All right, I'll take one more super chat before I leave. I just want to thank H. Brossi. You've been amazing. I just can't thank you enough for your support. Good guy there. And I really do appreciate that. Mountain goat time. I love that. I have the song Off to California and the mandolin in my mind. What do they call those? Earworms? Earworms? You get a tune in your head. Oh my gosh, Indian culture, dude. I pop up X, and it's... Oh, here's the other, like, liberal thing going on that I've noticed. So the other one is, like, all these Antifa. Antifa is now listed as a terrorist organization. So what are the left and liberals... What have they always been doing? They've been trying to say it's not an organ. It's an idea. It just means being anti, and that's what it means to be American. You're a retard. Like, that's so stupid. First of all, fascism's different than Nazism. And second of all, no, you're not. Your movement isn't just simply anti-Mussolini and Franco. And I would take that regime any day over liberal democracy and wokeism. So if your thing's an idea and you're seeing like, you're just making the other side look way better. And it isn't just, I mean, how stupid. It's just an idea. Can you imagine the mob? Because what they're trying to do is getting away from RICO, so they can keep doing this violence and this Marxist and Skittles, and do you know like 80% are like trans? They're all criminal. A lot of them are like criminals too. So they can keep doing this and be violent and justify, but like, whoa, it's anything's justified as long as it's anti-tiny mustache man. You see, I can do whatever I want. I just call anything I don't like tiny mustache man. What if I did that to somebody this person in front of me, I can remove them from the grocery line because they're tiny mustache man supporter. See? I don't have to justify that. It's an idea. But they're trying to get around RICO statutes so they can't get in trouble and be arrested for this stuff. Can you imagine the mob saying, what? What organization? Mob's an idea. It's an idea of family. Bada bing, bada boo. Oh, hey. So the thing going on now is they're actually getting arrested. And the liberals and Dems are like making fun of people happy about this. That these criminals are getting, and terrorists are getting, domestic terrorists are getting arrested, being like, ha ha, you stupid MAGA. I want MAGA. What are you talking about? Because I want to see these people locked up makes me a MAGA? Where's the car? Like, oh, so they were card carrying. So wait a minute. I'd like to ask the liberal. So if you had a neo-Nazi group and you arrested them for, can other people use that argument? Ho ho ho! They're not part of, this prison gang group or this neo-Nazi. Where's their card? You can't arrest a mob member. They don't hold a card. They're not a card carrier. I'm like, what a stupid. At this point, I'm like, I don't even care what you say. You should be locked up too. We're beyond having a conversation. I mean, the fact that you think you can make fun of all this stuff, like, nobody cares. There's no argument that you can make that's going to win us over to your side. You're all going to jail. How about that? I don't care if I can't prove by your standards this person was an Antifa. Lock them up. Who cares? What are you going to do about it? How about that? What are you going to do about it? And lock you up too for making fun of and supporting this stuff. I almost feel like this is the point. This is the only point where you're gonna get better. Like, just lock. Like, just what's a violation of free? I don't even care at this point. Nobody cares. Like, you guys are so insane that nobody cares anymore. You're such liars. and you're so violent and like you push way too far that nobody cares about arguments and what's fair and just. They're stuck in a two-party set. Yeah, if you disagree with me, you're a MAGA. They'll get them with interstate commerce too. Yeah, they have literally. They're funded. We know that. That's an organization. There's money that goes in. Does everybody that marches and says they're into? No. The organization's funded. A lot of money. We know that. That's undeniable. And left your leftoid, libtard. Nuh-uh. I don't care if you say nuh-uh. You're going to like you say. Anybody says nuh-uh should go to jail. How about that? Number two, they have a visible uniform. That's all part of. There's identifiable markers. They're being paid. They have a name. That's literally the definition of normie. I ask my students, like, what's a normie? Somebody can't do an analysis beyond the two-party political spectrum of, well, everything's either, it's all the Democrats' fault, or it's all the like, if you're that, like, you shouldn't be voting in the first place. Probably shouldn't be driving either. All right, that's my rant, my political rant for today. Don't you like when I get all fired up? Oh, let me check. Thomistic metaphysics. That's what we're waiting for. Oh, we got a bunch. Hold on. And now agnostic, $3. Any advice for an ex-atheist feels awkward and out of place in church? Um, yeah, you just kind of got to coach yourself through that. Like nobody's judging. Nobody's judging you. Um, take your time. Somebody had asked who's coming to church, like, what if I do something wrong? I'm like, you can't do something unless you do something illegal or come in an appropriate attire, in speedos, or I probably wouldn't wear shorts either. Or start yelling out in the middle of a service or something. Like, there's nothing you can do wrong. Just soak it in, take your time, just kind of coach you through. Like, I know I feel awkward, but it's gonna be okay. There's nothing to fear. You just gotta coach yourself. Edo token 999. You're the man, dude. You're the man. Thank you. And our last super chat for today, the Thomistic Metaphysics, $10. Is there a shorter work on the history of philosophy I can read before I go into? That's. I was just gonna say maybe the Cobbles will say. I don't think so. Because the Britannica set's even larger. I don't think there's anybody that's done. That would be actually a good project. The Crack Cocaine of great books. The Businessman's great books. You want to do the great books on the fly? Sign up for my course. Hi, I'm Father Deacon Ananias. You might have seen me from other episodes like, why is this man still talking? Or, but no, I can't think off the top of my head. I don't think anybody's done anything like Cobblestone's shorter than the Britannica set, and I don't think there's anything shorter than that. So, and it would just simply, you might just pick and choose just have to condense out of something like that because any shortened version would have done the same thing anyways. But great, thank you so much for the super chat. Don't have time to go into Father John. He has good stuff, and then he has some really wacky stuff. Some of the wacky stuff should be quite evident that it's totally wacko. Some stuff is actually pretty good. So Yeah, it's just it's just like social anxiety. Sometimes people walk outside and they think everybody's looking at them or judging. They feel awkward. But nobody's even paying attention. You just kind of got to coach yourself through there and practice. Practice makes perfect on that. Can you explain the history of epistemology and one short? Yeah. Failure. Oh, we figured it out and we didn't. It's another. And just when we've solved this problem, here's another worse problem. That it is the history of epistemology in 1 minute. All right. God bless you. May the Lord keep you, preserve you, and protect you. May you have a blessed Vespers this evening and liturgy tomorrow morning. Until next time, God bless all of you and take care.